That sound rang out like a gunshot in the cold white hallway. Ethan Cole's slap, the youngest tech billionaire in America, silenced the entire hospital. Lena, his wife, crumpled. Her hand instinctively cradled her 8-month pregnant belly. Blood seeped through the patient gown. And Ethan? He merely tightened his tie, casting a steel-cold glance at the woman the press once dubbed the muse of the startup world. "You embarrassed me," he said, his voice as indifferent as if closing a deal. In that moment, Lena realized her love had become a negotiation, and she was merely an asset being depreciated in his portfolio. But Ethan had forgotten one thing. Lena's father was no ordinary man. Jonathan Reed, a legendary CEO, the man who built a financial empire just to teach rivals how to collapse in silence. That night, when Lena called her father and whispered, "Dad, I need you," all of Wall Street began to tremble without knowing why. That sound echoed through the pristine white hallway like a trigger pulled in the dead of winter. The slap dislodged the metal nameplate on the doctor's chest. It spun across the stone floor. Everyone froze. A few nurses stood rigid, hands still clutching trays of instruments. Even the steady beeps of the fetal monitor stuttered in the thick silence. Lena Reed staggered. Her hand instinctively cradled her 8-month pregnant belly. Her eyes widened, not from pain, but from shock. Brown hair spilled over the cheek, now branded with a handprint. Blood trickled from the corner of her lip. Everything inside her shattered with a single sound. "You embarrassed me." Ethan Cole, America's youngest tech billionaire on the Forbes 40, under 40, stood towering in the exam room. His expensive suit was rumpled, tie askew, but his eyes cut like surgical steel. In his hand, his phone still glowed. Candace, incoming call, blinking. That call from his young, beautiful secretary had ignited this rage. "You dragged me out of a meeting with investors just to play this hospital game?" His voice hissed, low and heavy as forged steel. "You want to ruin my public image, don't you?" Dr. Miller stepped between them, voice trembling yet firm. "Mr. Cole, I insist you leave immediately. This is a hospital, and she's showing signs of bleeding. If you stay, I'll call security." Ethan's eyes flashed disbelief, as if the world itself had betrayed him. Then he gave a curt nod, straightened his tie, slipped on his mask, and left only a muttered curse. "Clean up this mess. I have real work to do." He walked away, footsteps decisive, leaving behind a suffocating silence. A nurse knelt to help Lena, her own hands shaking, voice choked. "It'll be okay, Mrs. Reed. Just breathe deep." The room filled again with the steady thump of the fetal monitor. Dr. Miller checked, then exhaled. "The baby's fine, but I need to keep you overnight. Your body's in shock, and we can't take risks." Lena only nodded. No tears left, only emptiness. She looked through the glass. Outside, the lights of Cole Dynamics, the multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate's headquarters, blazed across the New York sky. She once believed that light symbolized the dream they'd built together. Now she knew it was merely the bulb of a gilded cage. For 5 years, she had stood behind every speech, every deal, every headline calling Ethan a genius. She believed in him, even when others warned he was too cold, too ambitious. She had been wrong. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a ahad in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. To Ethan, she had never been a partner. She was just an entry in the ledger of power he owned. When the nurse closed the door, Lena slowly picked up her phone. The screen reflected her face, bruised, exhausted, but her eyes were different. No longer submissive, only ruthless clarity, the kind she'd learned from her father. His name glowed in her contacts. Jonathan Reed, founder of Reed Capital, one of Wall Street's most powerful investment firms, where a single nod from him could shake markets. She drew a breath, voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I need your help." On the other end, Jonathan's voice came warm, familiar. "Lena, what's wrong? You sound shaky." A pause. Then 3 words, clipped, cold as ice dropping into still water. "Ethan hit me." Silence stretched long enough for Lena to hear her own heartbeat. When her father spoke again, his voice was no longer a father's, it was a predator's, provoked. Where are you? Mount Sinai Hospital. Keep my granddaughter safe. Don't talk to anyone else. I'm on my way. Lena set the phone down, watching the city lights blur. For the first time in months, she felt hope. Ethan thought he controlled everything: assets, media, even their child's future. He was wrong. Because the father he was about to face had never lost on the battlefield of business. And Jonathan Reed didn't just protect his daughter, he repaid pain twofold. Outside, night fell over Manhattan. The Cold Dynamics logo atop the tower blazed like a challenge. Lena stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Keep shining, because tomorrow, it all goes dark." 3 days after the hospital incident, Lena's penthouse sank into expensive silence. No more familiar jazz, no scent of the candles Ethan demanded housekeeping replace every evening. Only rain tapping the glass, mingling with the slow, weary breaths of the woman sitting on the hardwood floor, cradling an open laptop. On screen, bank statements, encrypted emails, financial letters she'd never been allowed to see. An anonymous file sent to her private inbox hours ago. He didn't just betray you. He stole from you. Lena clicked. Each line opened like a scalpel slice into the past. Hidden transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Periodic withdrawals from a trust in her name. Strange consulting fees matching the woman whose voice had been on the phone that day, Candace Morgan. Everything collapsed. Not just love, but faith in the man she'd helped build an empire with. She remembered Ethan refusing to sign maternity insurance, saying, "Such things mislead shareholders." He hadn't cared about the child. He cared only about the balance sheet. When the penthouse door clicked open, Lena thought Ethan had returned. But it was Jonathan Reed. The man in his 60s, silver-streaked hair, dark trench coat, tall and sharp-eyed as if stepping from a portrait of power. He said nothing at first. He simply studied his daughter for a long moment, eyes full of fury, voice soft as wind. "Is the baby okay?" "Still kicking, Dad." "And you?" "I was never weak, just trusting." Jonathan sat beside her, scanning the laptop. Numbers, accounts, documents formed a maze. He frowned, then dialed. "Thomas, it's Dad. Get the financial team to the office tonight. And contact Tina Rodriguez. She'll need to see this file." He hung up, looked at his daughter. Ethan Cole thinks he's a genius, but he forgot every genius needs a gatekeeper. And I've been the gatekeeper for men far bigger than him. Lena gave a weak smile. "What are you going to do?" "Not do, darling. Reclaim what's yours, and teach him a lesson Wall Street will never forget. No one touches a Reed and walks away whole." That night, on the 72nd floor of Reed Capital, the lights stayed on. A group gathered around a massive walnut conference table. Thomas Reed, Lena's brother, general counsel, brilliant, icy, eyes identical to his father's. Tina Rodriguez, college friend of Lena, now a lawyer specializing in marital and financial crime. James Morton, veteran private investigator, ex-FBI. Jonathan entered, placed a thick dossier in front of them. "Cold Dynamics is hiding something bigger than infidelity," he said. "And I want to know exactly what it is before the SEC does." Thomas opened his laptop, light reflecting in his eyes. "I've run the public filings. Cold Dynamics has 13 offshore subsidiaries. Half have no real business activity." "Then," Jonathan said softly, "we're not just looking at a divorce. We're looking at nationwide fraud." Lena sat silent, hands clasped over her belly, feeling the baby's heartbeat. Every revelation about Ethan was a knife, but also medicine. She once thought herself weak. Now she knew strength wasn't fearlessness, but knowing what you fear and still standing. Tina placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll handle the legal side. But Lena, you need to be ready. When he realizes you're fighting back, he won't sit still." "I've endured enough," Lena replied, voice strangely calm. Now it's his turn. Jonathan studied his daughter, eyes tinged with worry. "Once we start, there's no turning back." "Dad, I don't want to turn back. I want to finish this." He nodded, a rare smile flickering. In the eyes of the man who'd made rivals tremble, pure pride appeared for the first time. "Well done, darling." Dawn the next day, Ethan returned to the penthouse. The scent of liquor and unfamiliar perfume followed him. He didn't know every email, text, and account was being silently monitored. Didn't know 6 specialists at Reed Capital were decrypting data from Cold Dynamics servers. And certainly didn't know his wife, the woman he'd just called old inventory, was becoming the linchpin in a federal investigation. Lena woke to the door. She looked at him, eyes no longer tearful, only icy calm. "You're back?" "Yeah, late meeting. Tired." "Not more than usual." He didn't realize her questions were only to record his voice, matching timestamps of texts sent to Candace Morgan at the same moments. As Ethan stepped into the bathroom, Lena opened her phone and sent one message to her father. "He's home. Everything is proceeding as planned." Reed Capital's sealed conference room looked less like finance and more like a military command center. 3 giant screens on the wall displayed Cold Dynamics' org chart. Red lines connected the parent company to dozens of shadowy subsidiaries. Under cold blue light, every face was taut. Jonathan Reed stood at the head of the table. No one sat while he spoke. "We're not just facing a traitor. We're facing a system he built to hide fraud. To protect Lena and the baby, we must dismantle that system at the root." Thomas leaned forward, pulled up a new slide. The title appeared, Operation Glass Cage. "This is a 3-phase plan," he said. 1. Gather financial evidence. 2. Seize narrative control. 3. Trigger simultaneous legal and media action, leaving Ethan Cole no time to counter. Lena sat quietly at the far end, hands on her belly, eyes fixed on the screen. She was no longer the victim from the hospital. The light in her eyes now matched her father and brother, cold, bright, razor-focused. Tina Rodriguez entered, placed a stack of files on the table. "I've filed a temporary asset preservation order for Lena. If Ethan tries to move money offshore, every transaction will be monitored." "Good," Jonathan nodded. "And the SEC?" "Thomas has reached an old contact on the commission. They'll be ready when we file." An assistant opened a laptop, played surveillance footage extracted by James Morton from internal cameras. Ethan and Candace exiting a restaurant, hand in hand, kissing beside the company car. Jonathan didn't blink. He only asked, "What day?" 3 days after the hospital, James answered, while Lena was still under observation. A chill swept the room. Thomas sighed, then looked at his sister. "You still want to proceed?" Lena stared at the screen 1 second longer, then nodded. "No turning back. Not just for me, but for every woman he's destroyed." 7 p.m. The plan activated. Jonathan held a video call with Cold Dynamics' 3 largest shareholders, men who once respected him more than Ethan. "I'm not asking you to take my word," he said calmly. "I just want you to read this and ask if you want your names on the indictment coming next." He emailed the summary compiled by Thomas's team. Transfer lists, offshore accounts, hidden debt. One shareholder frowned, another sweated. 10 minutes later, Jonathan received the first text. "We'll pull capital temporarily. Please keep the source confidential." He smiled faintly. One link broken. Simultaneously, Tina and James executed step 2, narrative control. An anonymous email landed at the Wall Street Ledger, containing evidence of Ethan's violence against his wife. No names, no photos, just one line. Sources say the young CEO of Cold Dynamics committed assault in a Manhattan hospital. The leak spread like a virus. Investment forums buzzed. Cold Dynamics stock twitched downward. Just a few more sparks, and it would crash. Lena followed the news from the new apartment her father had arranged a secure, discreet space. Seeing the headline, CEO Ethan Cole, accused of assaulting pregnant wife, her heart clenched. Not from glee, from realizing war had truly begun. She looked down at her belly, whispered to her child, "You'll be born into a world where justice exists at least this once." That night, Ethan sat in his Cold Dynamics office, watching the ticker blink. Stock dipped slightly, but he remained calm. "Just rumors," he told Candace over the phone. "They have nothing." He didn't know downstairs, a loyal employee had just left the building carrying a hard drive full of accounting proof. That person, Patricia, chief accountant, had chosen to contact James Morton after discovering her name used as a front for Cayman accounts. The next morning, that drive landed on Jonathan Reed's desk. Thomas opened the data. Columns of numbers scrolled like digital blood. At line 197, the room went dead silent. A transaction read, "Wire transfer, trust fund, L. Reed C. Morgan Holdings, $1,200,000. The room sank into thick silence. Jonathan stared at the data, voice low, certain. He used my daughter's money to fund his mistress, and used the trust I created as a money laundering tool. He looked at Thomas. Now we're not talking marriage. We're talking federal-scale fraud. That evening, the three sat again. Jonathan, Thomas, and Lena. No more charts or figures, only long silence. Lena asked softly, "Dad, how many people will be hurt if his company collapses?" "Many," Jonathan admitted. "But they all chose to follow a liar. You owe them nothing. I don't want anyone jobless. I just want him accountable. And that's what makes you different from him." Jonathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You want justice, not revenge. But sometimes, the two look very alike." Outside, the city night was still. Glass towers reflected each other's lights like a maze of power. Inside, the Reeds were planning to topple a billion-dollar empire without firing a single bullet. Manhattan's sky was gray, rain misting. On neon-lit streets, electronic billboards flashed non-stop news about coal dynamics. SEC launches preliminary probe, suspicions of financial fraud. The leak had become national headlines. In her safe apartment, Lena sat in soft light, watching live coverage. Ethan's face filled the screen, forced smile, perfectly combed hair, worry hidden behind the calm of a man used to camera lights. "These allegations are baseless," Ethan said in his CNN business interview. "We've always been transparent. Someone is trying to sabotage my reputation and my company." Lena watched him like a stranger. She once admired how he spoke, how he made entire rooms believe. Now she saw only a man painting his own path to the abyss. On the 72nd floor of Reed Capital, Jonathan Reed stood watching rain streak the glass. The conference room was now codenamed the War Room, command center of the campaign. On the table, reports from James Morton documents, emails, bank transactions, all organized, ready for the next media detonation. "Phase 2 begins," he said low, voice even as an order. "Thomas, deliver the file to our chosen financial reporter. Tina, file the asset freeze. James, confirm our inside source at Coal Dynamics is still secure." No one spoke. Each knew this was the pivot after tonight. No retreat for either side. Ethan sat in his office, assistants rushing. Phones rang nonstop. A young secretary burst in, face pale. "Mr. Cole, something's happened. The SEC just sent an emergency audit notice." "What?" "They say there are signs of unauthorized transfers from investment funds." He shot to his feet. "Who reported it?" "We don't know, sir. Possibly internal." That last word chilled Ethan to the bone. Internal? Who dared betray him? He thought of Patricia, the chief accountant who'd suddenly taken leave. He called Candace, voice urgent. "Have you heard?" "I saw," she replied, voice trembling. "Reporters are outside the building. Don't talk to anyone. No texts. Everything can be traced." But as Ethan hung up, his phone buzzed an anonymous message. "Don't worry, he doesn't need to speak. The world will know on its own." He stared out the window, fear creeping in for the first time. The storm was coming, and he didn't know where he stood in its eye. Back at Reed Capital, Thomas entered his father's office carrying a freshly printed dossier. "The SEC has responded. They've agreed to open a formal investigation." Jonathan looked up, eyes gleaming satisfaction. "Perfect. Once the government's involved, he has no moves left." Lena followed everything remotely, heart both cold and aching. She couldn't forget the man collapsing out there was once her husband, the father of the child inside her. But the memory of the slap still burned on her cheek. She placed a hand on her belly, whispered to her child. "Sometimes, to protect those you love, you have to let others fall." Friday morning, the media assault erupted. Front page of the Wall Street Ledger. Coal Dynamics, suspected of hundreds of millions in fraud source. Company insider. That same day, New York Post splashed photos of Ethan and Candace at a Bahamas resort. The story was no longer finance, it was domestic violence, infidelity, corruption. Shareholders began dumping stock. One outlet commented, "An empire built on lies needs only one truth to crumble." At the hospital, Lena met Dr. Miller for a prenatal check. He looked at her with mild surprise. "You look different, calmer, stronger." She smiled. "Because I know I'm no longer afraid." Leaving the hospital, She received a text from Tina. Ethan is preparing to leave the city. We must stop him now. Lena paused, heart pounding. She texted back, let him go. Dad has a plan. At that moment, inside Coal Dynamics headquarters, an emergency board meeting unfolded. Ethan's lawyers crowded the room, voices tight as wire. We need a counterattack. Public statement. Blame Reed Capital for stock manipulation. Ethan nodded, eyes flickering hope. Good. Do it. But as he started for the door, a voice rang out. You don't need to do anything, Ethan. He turned. Jonathan Reed stood there calm, courteous, as if arriving for tea. Security froze, bewildered. Jonathan held up a sheaf of papers, voice even. This is a federal court subpoena. Your company is officially under investigation for fraud and money laundering. Ethan stood stunned. You have no right. I don't need right. Jonathan cut in. I have proof. He stepped closer, voice low. You didn't just hit my daughter. You struck the honor of a family you never understood. And on Wall Street, Ethan, honor costs more than money. He left, leaving Ethan's statue still amid frightened employee eyes. Outside the glass, Coal Dynamics' lights dimmed in the gray rain. That night, back home, Jonathan waited for Lena. On the table, breaking news. FBI confirms coordination with SEC and Coal Dynamics probe. He looked at his daughter, voice low. Phase 2 complete. From now on, everything accelerates. Lena asked softly, should I feel happy, Dad? No, feel free. She nodded, glanced at the window. Outside, the city blazed, but inside her, an old chapter had gone dark. Only a new one was opening, titled simply, Justice. New York's sky had never been so quiet. On Madison Avenue, sirens were drowned by federal helicopters circling the glass tower bearing the Coal Dynamics logo. Crowds gathered below, phones raised as FBI agents in jackets pushed through the revolving doors, search warrants in hand. On the 51st floor, Ethan Cole sat motionless before the window. Computer blue light reflected on his pallid face. An hour ago, he thought he could still run. Now, fake passports seized, accounts frozen, phone buried in hundreds of missed calls from lawyers, shareholders, reporters. Mr. Cole, we have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of securities fraud, money laundering, and financial abuse, an agent said, voice professional. Ethan stood, gave a faint smile. You think you understand the story? You're just pawns. Maybe, the agent replied, cuffing him. But this time, you're the king in checkmate. As they led him down the hallway, Ethan saw dozens of employees' faces that once bowed to him now averting their eyes like avoiding plague. He wanted to shout, to tell them he'd only made a few mistakes, that he was still the genius who took the company public. But words choked in his throat. All he heard were camera shutters and the clink of cuffs. Across town, Lena Reed sat in her father's living room. The TV broadcast the arrest live. She sat still, no tears, no smile. On the table, the official divorce petition signed, not yet filed. Jonathan entered, carrying another thick file. The FBI has confirmed, he said. They have enough. Coal Dynamics stock is near zero. So it's over? Lena asked softly. No, Jonathan replied. Now he faces real consequences. He placed before her another document. Petition for sole custody. Do you want to file it now? She looked at the paper. The bold Cole versus Reed weighed heavy on her heart. I'll wait, she said after a pause. Not because he deserves it, but because I don't want our daughter born amid ashes. Jonathan studied her, eyes mixing pride and compassion. You've done better than anyone. But remember, in this world, if you don't control the narrative, someone else will write it for you. She nodded. I understand, Dad, and I'm ready to write the rest. In Manhattan's Federal Holding Center, Ethan sat at a metal table. Across from him, his defense attorney, a man in his 40s with tired eyes. The prosecutor offers 18 years federal. Plea for reduction, the lawyer said. No, Ethan answered immediately. I won't plead guilty. Ethan, they have emails, accounts, witnesses, even transfers you signed. You can't win. Can't? He leaned back, faint smile. I built an empire from nothing. I can do it again. The lawyer looked at him, sighed. Your empire was destroyed by your own family, Cole. You think Reed Capital wants justice? They want your name erased from history. The words cut like a knife. Ethan fell silent, eyes darkening. In that brief moment, he realized it was all his own fault. The hospital slap, the contempt, the greed, the betrayal. He had taught Lena how to fight, and she had used that lesson to destroy him. 2 days later, Lena was summoned to the federal prosecutor's office as the key witness. The room stark white, black leather chairs, files thick as walls. A female prosecutor placed photos, statements, message threads before her. "We know about the hospital assault. Do you want to add that charge to the criminal file?" Lena was silent. "This is your chance to make him pay fully," the prosecutor added. She looked up, eyes calm. "I don't need him in prison for a slap. I need him to lose what he loves most: power." "So you decline separate prosecution?" "I choose freedom, without hatred." The prosecutor nodded. Wise decision. But inside, Lena knew forgiveness was never weakness. It was the only way to close the door on the past without carrying it forever. That evening, in her new apartment, Lena wrote a letter. She didn't know if Ethan would ever read it, but she wrote, "Ethan, you once thought I was weak, that I needed you to survive. But really, you showed me what strength is: not power, but choosing to walk away when everything collapses. Our daughter will carry my name, because I want her to grow up without bearing her father's mistakes. I don't hate you anymore. I just have no room for you in my life. Goodbye, Lena." She folded the letter, sealed it in a white envelope, and tucked it into a wooden box with her old wedding ring. One chapter closed. At the same moment, in his cell, Ethan received an internal mail envelope. No sender name. He opened it, found the morning paper front page photo of Lena smiling, holding their newborn daughter. Headline: Lena Reed, the woman who rose from darkness. Below, a handwritten note. "Now do you understand?" Ethan stared at the words, then looked up, eyes empty. Outside, a guard's voice. "Visitation time, Cole. Someone wants to speak with you." He frowned, stood, and when the door opened, waiting on the other side was Jonathan Reed. The man entered, calm, eyes no longer angry, only cold as stone. "I didn't come to humiliate you, Ethan," Jonathan said. "I came to say thank you." "Thank you," Ethan sneered. "You destroyed me." "No, you destroyed yourself. I only held up a mirror." Jonathan stood to leave. Before crossing the threshold, he said without turning, "You once said the company was family. Thank you for reminding me that sometimes protecting family means destroying the company." The iron door slammed shut. Ethan sat, eyes fixed on the metal table, reflecting his distorted, hollow face. For the first time, he felt terrifyingly small. Cold wind whipped down Fifth Avenue as Lena pushed the stroller from the building. On the baby's hair, morning sun glinted like liquid gold. Everything seemed finished, but her phone buzzed with an anonymous text. "He still has people on the board. The game isn't over." She froze. Heart pounded. For a moment, city noise vanished. She reopened the message. No name, no photo, just cold words. And below, the icon of two clasped hands, the signature Ethan once used to seal deals. That afternoon, at Reed Capital headquarters, Jonathan Reed and Thomas held an emergency meeting. On screen, a chart of Coal Dynamics' stock once collapsed, now suddenly reinfused with capital from an offshore fund called Halcyon Holdings. "That's a shell," Thomas said, frowning. "Who's behind it?" "A group of former Coal Dynamics executives," James Morton, the investigator, answered. "Rumor is Ethan still runs them from prison." Jonathan was silent. He knew it could be true. Men like Ethan never stopped, even in chains. "Should we respond?" Thomas asked. "No," Jonathan replied, voice low. "Don't let him drag us back into the mud. We won. The rest is for the law." But Lena wasn't convinced. That night, she opened her laptop, accessed Ethan's old company data systems she still had access to as former CEO wife. She found a string of emails sent after Ethan's arrest. "Stay in touch. Plan B." From an anonymous account. C. Morgan. Candace. The next morning, Lena met Tina Rodriguez in their old cafe. "Candace Morgan," Lena said, sliding printed emails across the table. "She's still active. If Ethan has operatives outside, she's the key." Tina scanned, then looked up. "If true, we can add illegal transfers from detention. But are you sure you want to reopen this, Lena?" "Not for me," she replied. For my daughter. I don't want her growing up hearing her father is still manipulating the world. Tina nodded. Done. You're no longer the victim, Lena. You're the plaintiff of justice. Meanwhile, at the federal prison, Ethan Cole sat in the visitation room, receiving a strange envelope. Inside, a copy of the article, Cole Dynamics, Reborn as Halcyon Holdings. He smiled faintly. See, Jonathan, he muttered. No one truly takes me down. But turning the page, the smile faded. Bold photo. Candace Morgan arrested at JFK charge. Illegal transfers to inmate. Ethan stood, slammed the wall, echo cold in the small room. A guard stepped in, eyes wary. Sit down, Cole. You don't understand. I can rebuild. I'll come back, Ethan shouted, eyes wild. But the scream only bounced off concrete walls, then vanished. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Lena was speaking at a conference titled Women in Finance, Voices of Resilience. Stage lights glowed on her soft brown hair, voice steady and sure. Strength is not the absence of fear. Strength is rising anyway, even when fear has become a scar. I lost everything and found myself in the ashes of broken trust. The auditorium fell silent. Hundreds of women, once overshadowed by power, looked at her with empathetic eyes. Lena drew a breath, smiled. Justice is not revenge, it is balance. And sometimes, that balance begins when we learn to say, enough. The room erupted in applause. Tina sat front row, tears shining. Jonathan watched from afar, gripping his coffee, eyes mixing pride and relief. That night, Lena returned home, cradling her sleeping daughter. She opened the window, cold wind rushing in. The city blazed below, once witness to love, betrayal, power, rebirth. She whispered, "You'll grow up in light, not your father's shadow." A new message appeared from an unknown number. "Congratulations, your story inspires. I used to work at the SEC, and you've made us believe justice still matters." Lena smiled, deleted the message, set the phone down. For the first time in years, she slept peacefully. 3 months later, Ethan Cole was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. The judgment read clearly. The defendant showed contempt for law, honesty, and humanity. This sentence is a reminder. No one stands above justice. The news spread, but now evoked no hatred, only the end of an era. Zara Sterling had won in the original version of the story. But Lena Reed had done more. She turned victory into a symbol. 1 year later, an autumn afternoon, Lena walked her daughter along the Hudson River. The toddler babbled her first words, one of them, "Mama." She stopped, watched the water reflect the sunset. In the gentle breeze, Jonathan's voice echoed in memory. "You owe the past nothing, only learn from it." She smiled. "I did it, Dad," a soft gust answered. Federal Prison, Allenwood, Pennsylvania. Outside, snow fell white. Inside, the heater wheezed like the faint breath of old souls. Ethan Cole sat alone in the reading room. Before him, a thin notebook, dark leather cover, labeled, "Confidential, Cole, Ethan, Inmate Journal." At first, he wrote only to kill time. But lines turned into confessions, not for anyone, not for publication. Just the only way he knew to stay human when everything was gone. Day 1. I once thought justice was a concept for the weak. But then justice became the only thing that makes the strong bow. They say I lost to greed. Wrong. I lost because I believed I was God. Ethan set down the pen, looked out the barred window. An old inmate nodded hello from the yard. He returned a small nod, then wrote again. Day 32. Lena, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I tried convincing myself I hate you, but the truth is I envied you. You had something I never did. Faith. You believed in others. You believed in kindness. And that saved you and killed me. 3 months passed. The notebook thickened. Handwriting grew steadier, calmer. Ethan began teaching math to young inmates in the prison. He wrote equations on the old whiteboard, voice gentle, no longer arrogant. "Numbers never lie," he said. "Only people do." The young inmates listened. Some smirked, some nodded. They knew who he once was, the king of Wall Street. One day, Guard Patterson approached. "Cole, you have a visitor." "I don't have anyone." "Today you do." When Ethan entered the visitation room, he froze. Behind the glass sat Lena Reed, sand-colored coat, hair loosely flowing, eyes serene. In her arms, a tiny girl with big dark eyes and curly hair just like his once was. Ethan couldn't speak. Lena only looked at him. No anger, no blame. "I didn't come to talk about the past," she began. "Just to let you see the future." She placed her daughter's hand on the glass. "Your daughter, Ava." Ethan raised his hand, lightly touching the glass opposite the tiny palm. His fingers trembled as they followed the small hand. Tears welled, unstoppable. "Thank you," he whispered, voice hoarse. "No need," Lena replied. "Just don't make her ashamed to carry the name Cole." She stood, adjusted her coat. Before leaving, she turned back. "I'll never forget what you did, but I won't let it define the rest of my life." The door closed, leaving Ethan alone with the cold metallic echo. That night, he opened the journal. Day 190. "Today, I met my daughter. Her hand is small, but its weight brought me to my knees. I once thought power was making others bow. Now I know real strength is helping others stand, even after you've hurt them." He wrote until his hand ached. When he looked up, the snow had stopped. Moonlight glinted on the bars like bright scars on the ground. 1 year later, Lena Reed stood on the stage of the Women's Leadership Summit. Behind her, large letters, "From victim to visionary." "The man who once destroyed me is now learning to repair himself in prison," she told hundreds. "And that taught me, forgiveness isn't for others, it's for yourself." She paused, scanned the silent hall. "I don't want to be remembered as the woman betrayed. I want to be remembered as the woman who chose to rise." Thunderous applause. Tina, Jonathan, Thomas sat front row. In Jonathan's hand, this morning's paper, an article by a journalist. Lena Reed, the woman who redefined power. Meanwhile, at Allenwood, Ethan folded the journal, handed it to guard Patterson. "I want to send this out," he said, "to the Reed Capital Foundation. If she wants, use it to raise funds for women escaping financial abuse." Patterson looked at him, surprised. "You sure?" "Sure. I can't erase what I did, but maybe I can give something back even if only a few pages." He looked out the barred window. Snow fell again. This time, he didn't feel cold. 3 months later, Lena received an unmarked package. Inside, the old leather notebook, opened by familiar handwriting. The final page held 4 lines. "I learned how to lose, and in loss, I found the humanity I'd traded away. If one day Ava asks who I was, tell her, her father was once a king and learned the lesson of a mortal." Lena closed the notebook, set it on her desk. Outside the window, late-day sun gilded the city. She smiled, light as breath. Dawn light flooded the glass towers, reflecting on the Hudson like thousands of broken mirrors pieced into a new picture. On the river path, Lena Reed carried her daughter, walking slowly, breath mingling with the wind. No more meeting noise, no shadow of power. Only 2 lives, one learning to live, one relearning to love. Elsewhere, Ethan Cole looked at the sky through a small prison window. For the first time, he thought not of stocks, not of winning or losing. He only remembered the touch of a child's hand through cold glass, the only thing that made him feel human. The narrator's voice rose, warm, speaking to every viewer. "Sometimes, justice doesn't come with gunfire or verdicts. It arrives the moment we dare release hatred and choose freedom. Not freedom from others, but from the darkness inside ourselves." The camera panned slowly from Lena's gaze to the horizon, melting into Ava's smile, the child symbolizing tomorrow. Light flared, filling the frame. The screen faded, letters appeared. "No one is born to be a victim. Anyone can become the author of their own story. If this story makes you believe justice still exists, share it. Let others know. No darkness lasts forever, only hearts that choose to rise."